Some of you might know that I have an interest in geology, and it's something I'm trying to learn more about this year, particularly when it comes to different building materials and local stones used for building local churches. A little bit different, but last weekend I came on a guided geology tour of York Cemetery, where I am now a week later, and I'm going to retrace my steps with the guided tour handout that was composed by Dr Victoria Hopgood and Dr Liam Herringsham. They're not with me today, but it's going to be a good guide. We'll begin here down in the central part of the cemetery, just away from the chapel, and then we'll curve around and look at the different variety of stones. As I walk around and look at some of the different stones and all the wonderful monument types, of course I'm going to have the utmost respect for all the families and relatives, many of whom come here still and tend some of the graves. But thankfully, quite a lot of the paths have been cut clear, so we should have a pretty clear path as we move ahead. I've had to come and stand in the shade for a second because it's only 10 o'clock, but it is stinking hot here in York this morning. So this is just a little preamble to say that I am not going to be strictly following the guided geology tour handout. It covered quite a lot of monuments. I'm just going to be picking out some of the highlights and some of the ones I found most interesting when we covered them a week ago. Nor am I going to be looking for all of the most special and extraordinary monuments that are, scattered around this cemetery. But no, I'm just going to be sticking to a short course, a small handful of monuments which I thought would be really interesting to cover. So yeah, I'll put some sun cream on and we'll just get cracking on. There are dozens and dozens, hundreds of course, of headstones, simple headstones, sandstone ones, which commemorate individuals associated with the Victorian history of York. I mean, there's everyday people, innkeepers, solicitors, railway workers. One of my favourites is a photographer who died in the 1860s, photographer of this city, it says. So there's plenty to see here, even if you're not coming just for the extraordinary, granite monuments. There's plenty to see. This was one of the first monuments we saw, so it's going to be the first one I'll show you. It's a granite obelisk of sorts, grey granite. Not quite sure exactly where it's from. It's late 19th century, early 20th century in date. And when we were here, we were using our loupes, our little eye lenses, to look at the composition of the granite and to look at all the different components. And we could see that this was quite small components. All the different crystals in there are quite small and compact, which means that this stone was probably formed quite close to the surface of the earth. It's a very interesting monument. I was particularly interested in the way that the monumental mason was able to cut the letters into the stone. I thought that perhaps because of the crystal size it might chip away and be difficult to work with, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And the stone is finished really nicely, and it looks to be still in really good condition. So let's move on now to look at another granite stone. So another late Victorian obelisk here. This is also granite on top, of a different colour to the one we just saw. This is more of a sort of pinky peachy colour. The crystals here are much larger, which means that this granite being an igneous rock, which means it was formed of molten magma somewhere in the Earth's crust. If it's got larger crystals, that means it was formed much deeper into the Earth's surface. Smaller the crystals means it cools closer to the surface. So it may have been harder to work with in terms of getting an epitaph or some lettering in there. The stonemason may have had a harder job of it if the crystals are bigger. I thought that may have been the case, but we were told it wasn't necessarily the case. The epitaph is actually down here. It's sort of stuck on in lead lettering. This is a marble block at the bottom here, and it is quite weathered and dirty, and it would need a very careful cleaning, which would obviously scrape away a bit of the surface layer. So that's why it probably hasn't been cleaned, because you'd actually have to scratch and take a surface layer off to clean it. So it could be detrimental to the condition of the stone. But yeah, another great monument type here. And now let's go and have a look at a different kind of sandstone monument, a sedimentary rock. Sometimes I completely forget where I'm going in this cemetery. Completely lose my bearings. I think we're going this way. I have to say, I've never seen a Commonwealth war grave for somebody who was in the Manchester Regiment. It's a first for me. Beautifully carved. Portland stone, is that? Could be. Yep, I'm having to go back because I'm completely lost. Where the hell am I? I genuinely don't know where I'm going. This way. Oh my god, would you believe it? There's the Mary Ann Craven and Thomas monument, and here's the one I was trying to find. Right here. When we were here a week ago, this was all overgrown and we were having to beat the bushes and all the foliage away with sticks. I completely didn't recognise it. But here you go, this is the monument to Enid Marie Ord, wife of George Royston Roy Ord. Enid died in 2014, her husband died in 1984. Enid founded, so we were told, the first city geology club here, the York Geologists. She was a bit of a pioneer of geology in the city of York, and the motifs that are carved into the sandstone, there's an ammonite up there representing Enid herself, oak leaves and acorns for her husband apparently. That's the tansy plant on which you will find the very rare tansy beetle, which can be found in places in Fulford, up the Ouse Ings and near the River Foss, and the sleeping cat there for her daughter. I think she has 2 daughters, so I'm not entirely sure. But it's a beautiful monument and there's space left there for their daughters' names. I believe there's an arrangement for future burials in this plot or around here. But what a fantastic sandstone monument, and apparently a very special type of sandstone, local to where she was born, somewhere in Dorset or down south. I may be wrong there, but I thought this was an incredibly beautiful and well carved monument. I love the cat and the acorns, the tansy plant and the ammonite. I think it's all brilliant. Loved ones never die. So I'm not going to get up close to this one because I don't want to get too close, but I want to be respectful. But an absolutely beautiful memorial. This is another monument we were shown, relatively new one as well, 2015, to David Bryan Slater. Do you see what kind of stone it is? Do you get the pun? It's cooling down a bit now, which is good news. But I'm just taking a slight detour because I want to show you something which admittedly isn't included in the guided geology walk. But it's, pardon me, the interesting monument of archaeologist Richard Hall, who died in 2011, I believe. And his monument has representations of Anglo-Saxon metalwork, which, as a sort of medievalist, history of art student, lover of the art of the insular world and Viking period, I'm a big fan of it, so I want to show you this. Down here we get to see this unusual monument, which is a piece of ironstone. So that's a sandstone with a very high iron content. It gives it this rich, deep red colour. Now you might be wondering, sorry about the glare on this angle, the sun's gone in and it's a bit bright. Now you might be wondering what this is. We're actually looking at it from the other way around, because if you see here, there's this, well, quite high ledge, almost very high curb, and there are these more modern graves put here for ashes, the interment of ashes, I presume. So this ironstone monument is actually of a row which faced that way, so the body is over there, probably with that silver birch tree just around the foot of it. Well, that's what we were told. So everyone was not quite sure what this symbol was at the top. It's an Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, in reverse. So that's the halo. We're looking at it sort of like a dish on the back of the lamb's head, and you can see the scroll just flapping over its shoulder. I'll see if I can get round and take a little look from the other side. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to. No, I probably won't actually. But yeah, there you go. An unusual ironstone, bit of sandstone. Oh, the sun's out. Alright, okay, let's get on and see the Great Portland Stone War Memorial. Right, so the Cross of Sacrifice, erected in 1949, replaces an earlier one which was damaged by enemy action in 1940. That's quite interesting. Monument in Portland stone, a very resistant shelly oolitic limestone from the Jurassic, quarried from the Isle of Portland in Dorset. Well, it's over there behind those trees. Interestingly, it says here Portland stone has been used to build St Paul's Cathedral, presumably the Wren one, not just more recent repairs, Buckingham Palace, the UN HQ in New York, and the Cenotaph. So this is a stone that has a sort of national quality to it, a sort of military purpose. It seems to be something which seems to be associated with the capital, with the identity of the nation, and the English military, perhaps the British military. So it's quite an important stone, I think, which is only used in particular types of building. And also, I believe it looks like it could be similar to the stone used for the Commonwealth war graves. Some of the Yorkshire Regiment, West Yorkshire Regiment, and the Manchester one, which we've seen here. But a very impressive stone. Okay, well that about wraps it up. Thank you for joining me on this baking morning. The sun can't make its mind up if it's in or out. But this is a wonderful place to visit if you're local, or if you're visiting York and you're interested in old cemeteries. This is fantastic. It's got some brilliant monuments here. I've had a wonderful time this morning coming out. Definitely get a bit of sunburn. But if you're here as well, do come and download some of the walkabout guides. There are loads which you can download as PDFs on the York Cemetery Trust website. Those are well worth your time. The people who made those put a lot of time and effort into them, so they are really well worth it. And especially the geology one, but also the one of eminent people who's lost their lives in specific ways. You can go on walks and find different people from different walks of life, so it covers people who are commemorated here who had different occupations and that sort of thing. You get the gist of what I mean. But okay, thank you. Well, join me for another video soon. We'll probably be going back out to a church, hopefully getting away from York for a change. I've done a few York videos recently, but we'll be back out somewhere in Yorkshire. I've got Norfolk coming up as well, Bristol later in the year, which will be fantastic. All right, thanks guys. See you later.